ease your way into this. You can't just blindside them with comps and say, this is what it is. And this is how man, there's a way to do it properly. And anytime you come in and say, this is it, and this is how it's going to be, you're going to lose.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Shawn and Matt Show. My name is Matt, that is Shawn, and welcome to our show. Shawn, in today's episode, we're going to talk about how to lowball strategies for the upcoming 2023 real estate market, how to lowball, what to look for, and how to get the most off when you are looking to lowball. We're also going to be talking about Washington, D.C.'s newest suburb, which is Richmond, Virginia.
Wow.
Yes.
That's a long ways away.
Well, that's what you think, but I have some strong data points that may suggest that it's a lot closer than you may believe.
Okay.
And then we're going to be talking about in or out, whether Shawn battles in or out on 3 properties across the world. We're going across the world.
Okay.
One property is in Arlington.
Really?
So
I didn't know.
I am excited to talk about that property.
But
let's start with an article from Realtor.com entitled, Just How Low Can a Lowball Offer Go? Married to Real Estate reveals the answer. So HGTV show Married to Real Estate agent Egypt Sherrod and her husband, builder Mike Jackson, talk about how to lowball. And it essentially got me thinking. We haven't really told our audience in a recent video best strategies to lowball. In their scenario, Sherrod said that a couple was looking to buy a house. Property was listed for $1 million, and the couple wanted to pay $950,000, and the agent thought that there was a little more wiggle room in there, and so they put in an offer at $935,000, and then they got a counter offer at $950,000 where they wanted to be, and so the buyers were super happy. So Shawn, it got me thinking. Have you lowballed? And the word lowball, I mean, some people could look at $950,000 and say, hey, they just got a discount. But the reality is, when the market's been the way it has been for the past 2.5 years or so, I mean, $50,000 off the list price could be considered a lowball, especially when you're going in $65,000 off the list price. So Shawn, how do you go about broaching the topic when your client wants to lowball, or you see the opportunity? What sort of opportunities do you see? How do you talk about that with the client, and then how do you talk about that with the listing agent?
Yeah, starting off, I would say the first thing I look at is days on market. Days on market will be the first indicator on what you can do with that. Now, if it's a high days on market and these sellers have had a little bit of time to digest what is going on, and maybe the market's slipping a little bit, then I think you have a lot more opportunity. So number one, that. Number two is property condition. If you feel like the property needs a lot of work, then there is a lowball opportunity there. And it all depends, again, third, on the price. Where's the price in relation to comps? And so these 3 things combined will, say, all right, how low can we go? I've been in scenarios where I go real low, even on a property recently. I just lowballed one recently, and honestly, it didn't work. And this is the scenario I'll give you. I felt like it was overpriced.
Can you talk about price points?
This was priced at just under $1.2 million.
Okay.
All right. I felt like it was overpriced. We came in, I want to say, I think it was $100,000, almost $100,000 low, because I just felt like, listen, this isn't. Actually, it was a little more than $100,000 low, because I looked at the comps. I know this area. I know these things, and I know what was against that property. And so we lowballed it. And the sellers, honestly, the problem is you're going to have different sellers every time. And some sellers are going to be like, no way, no how. I don't need the money. I'm not going to do that. Okay, see you later. Then you'll have the people that are like, all right, we really need this thing. How are we going to, and so you have the opportunity with those types of sellers.
Well, you talk about the sellers, but, also the agents. You have different agents every time. So how do you work to get the agent on board, and so they don't just throw up their hands and say, this is the worst offer I've ever seen?
Yeah, and you'll get that a lot. And you just have to be strong in your knowledge of, hey, I know this market. I know that you know this market too, but they're going to play that, there's some agents that'll play the game that, no, I'm right. And I'm going to play the game that I'm right and my clients are right. And so where is that meeting middle? And so, when you look back, and when I look back, and I ended up getting my client a different property that I feel was the way better value. And so that's the one we went after. And we settled that now 2 months ago. And guess what? That other property,
Still on?
still in the market, dropped their price. So you kind of have to know the market. You have to know ins and outs of where to go. But here's what I'll say about lowballing. You always run the risk of the seller getting mad. So if you really want the house and you lowball, you can always run the risk of upsetting the seller and then ruining your chances of getting a good deal. And this has happened in many times.
Who cares about the seller's like emotions? Because properties sell for $100,000 off the asking price all the time. Like we've seen price drops, 1.7 down to 1.4. And
Absolutely.
it's not out of the realm. So I mean, it's a dangerous game. Well, I just want to put it out there. Like if you're a buyer and you tell your agent, hey, I want to submit this offer, and the agent says, oh, well, you don't want to submit it because you're going to, you're going to upset the sellers. Like you want to find another agent. Like if your agent is saying, it's one thing if they say, hey, these are the pros and cons. If you do this, the con, they may not want to work with you. But if the agent is saying, don't submit the offer, you're going to upset the seller, it's time to find a new agent.
Yeah. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
okay.
What you have to do is say, hey, client, do you want this house? This is the risk that you run. If you put in this offer and you piss them off, they might say, screw you, I'm not taking your offer no matter where it is. And this has happened to me. So that's why I warn against that. It can happen. Or your negotiations just go sour and you end up paying more than you wanted to because you really love the house and you screwed up and you did the wrong thing. You're trying to get a deal. Believe me, I want to get a deal every time and I'm trying to every time, but those are the risks that you run. So really, it's always about communicating with the listing agent. A lot of time, listing agents will give you a lot of details, right?
Well, I was going to say there is no clients want to know the motivation for selling. Hey, why are they selling? And there's no reason a listing agent has to tell you that. But at the same time, you do a little bit of social engineering. That listing agent will tell you the seller's whole life story.
Oh my gosh, yeah. We've gotten so much good information from that and then curtailed our made our offer based on the information that we're getting. And at the same time, I would never do that, but some listing agents are just like, we just got to get rid of this property. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll get rid of it for you, So as a listing agent, you have to be very careful on what you're telling the buyer's agent. You have to kind of be stern in the way you're talking to them. But as a buyer's agent, if you can start working a rapport there and try to get as much information for that buyer as you can, then you can make that offer. You have knowledge on creating that offer. So when I make a lowball offer, I'm telling my buyers, listen, we're going to go in low. So how can we sweeten it on other things? And so those other things is, again, talking to the listing agent. Hey, how long do they want to, do they want to sell quickly? Do they need a rent back? A lot of times, if you give the seller what they need in other regards, like a rent back, they need to feel comfortable that, oh my God, I settled the property. Now I can rent back for 2 months and I can move. That wins you so much in price if you can do that. I'm telling you, I've done it so many times where I'm like, all right, just give them the 2 months, and let's kill them on the price. Quick settlement, they can have their money, they're done, move on. And you're going to get a much better deal.
Because if you're going like $80,000 under, what's a couple months? Like $4,000? Like it really doesn't make that big of a difference. What I'm curious about is once the client tells you they want to submit this lowball offer, what happens behind the curtain, right? Like what's the next step? How do you prepare the listing agent for a bombshell, for like an, oh my gosh, I can't believe they just, because if you blindside them, they're just gonna be like, whoa, what's going on here? So what methodology do you go about?
Yeah,
that?
Sometimes I'll call them and I'll just be like, listen, we have an offer coming over. It is a little bit lower than maybe what you're expecting, but here are the reasons we're doing this. And I usually spell it out and say, all right, here are the comps. Here's what we see the value is. And here is the condition. This is what we've got to put into the property. And that is how we came up with our number. So if you show them exactly how the steps that you came up with that number, they're going to be able to picture it and see it a little bit better. But remember, there's always emotion in these transactions. And the seller always thinks that their property is better than anybody else's. And it happens all the time. So it's trying to get past that emotional barrier that the seller has. But a lot of times if you spell it out and the agent sees it and the agent's like, all right, I kind of see where they're coming from. And then you kind of have that workability with that agent to say, all right, talk to your clients because, This is where we are, and we're not going to budge from that. And sometimes if you put the line in the sand, you have a much better opportunity. Now, let's bring this up. Didn't you just get a lower offer this
Well,
month?
we can bring that up, but I want to know, who are these agents that you're talking to that are open to you teaching them about comparable properties? Because whenever I tell an agent about a comp, they say, don't tell me about a comp. Like, I know how to do my job. Where are you finding these agents that have no ego, that are willing to listen to your comparable property analysis?
Man, I don't know. Maybe I soften them up a little bit, soften them up with a little like, hey, how's it going? Talk about life, talk about how's the market, blah, blah, blah. You gotta ease your way into this. You can't just blindside them with comps and say, this is what it is. And this is how man, there's a way to do it properly. And anytime you come in and say, this is it, and this is how it's going to be, you're going to lose. You have to know how to talk to people. And if you can skirt your way in by being nice to people, and that's kind of our nature, right? I'm a nice person. I'm not going to like hammer you to death straight off the bat. I'm going to hammer you nicely, and
that's kind of what I wanted, that you answer my question, because when I asked, hey, pull back the curtain, what are the steps? The steps aren't, let me take an analytical approach and A, B, and C, and we should get $100,000 off. That may be true, but is that really going to resonate with the other side? What's going to resonate with the other side? It's Shawn asking about the listing agent's son's hockey game over the weekend, and what they did last week, and then eventually we get to the point of like, hey, listen, X, Y, and Z, here's why we're coming in low.
You have to build a rapport. That's all it's a conversation. You have to have a good conversation with the person and empathize with it. Pull that emotion in. The wrong way to do it is to send an offer blindly really low and have no conversation. And we've gotten those offers. We're like, are you kidding me? But if you talk a little bit and talk through the ups and downs of everything, and you maybe talk about the market and be like, oh man, it's slow. It's how many showings are you having? I'll ask that. How's showings? How was the open house? That thing. You can get a lot of information just by conversation, not necessarily them giving you, information they shouldn't. It's just talking about life, talking about how the market is. And the thing is, when we're in this market, we know the market. We know what showings are happening. We can feel if they're up or down. And so we can kind of play that off of other agents because we already know. We know what it's doing. So, there's no right or wrong way of doing it. But I would say that if you're going for price, give them something else in the contract. Giving them a quick settlement, no contingencies, like do a pre-inspection and then don't ask for anything else. Like that's a solid way of getting more off your price.
So we did get a lower offer on a new listing. Mm-hmm. Not really at liberty to go into it right now. What I can say is the seller has a number. And if the buyer comes up to that number, they'll sell it at the number. And if the buyer doesn't, the seller is more than happy to have the property on the market for more than 8 days,
exactly,
to see if they can get that number.
Now, this is another thing, right?
And if we can't get that number, Mr. or Mrs. It's actually Mrs. Buyer, come back to us in 90 days and hey, grill us even harder. Maybe we'll sell it for less at that point. But we have a number and we're going to get that number.
And sometimes, yeah, exactly. And sometimes that's another thing, is days on market is important. So that first weekend, it's really, really hard to get a good lowball offer taken. But what you do is you throw that in and you say to your buyer, listen, this might not work right now, but you throw it in, you show some interest. You showed interest on that first weekend. Maybe no one else writes. Maybe it sits for a while, and then we entertain that offer again later. And so then they start seeing where we're coming from. And so that, again, is a softening, approach. It might not work, and you might have to just go to the next property. And that's the thing is, lowballing, if you're an investor, lowballing can't be emotional. It's just like, hey, we're going to go after this one. If it doesn't work, we'll go after the next one. And one of them will work. It's a numbers game. If you're an emotional buyer and you want to get a deal, that's a different story. So there's a lot of things that you have to look at in this regard. I'm happy to write lowball offers. There just has to be a reason for doing so, for the most part. Give me some ammo on how to back this up. There's been plenty of times when I just write the offer and just throw it in and say, hey, this is what my buyer's willing to pay for this property. And that's just it. It's a business decision. And that's what people have to understand. This is business. This isn't emotional. This isn't personal. We're throwing this offer because we want this place at this price. Period.
Drop a comment down below if you've tried to lowball, if it was successful or unsuccessful. Let us know how it went. Shawn, let's move on to our next topic. This story originally came from Axios. Now, the article came out about a month ago, and I kind of just shrugged it off like, yeah, okay. And then, Washingtonian picked it up, and I thought, okay, this is time to discuss this. Northern Virginia residents are relocating to Richmond in droves. Shawn, there was a 36% increase in the number of residents from Northern Virginia who moved to Richmond during 2020 and 2021 compared to 2012 to 2019. Now, obviously, 2020, 2021, you don't need to be in the office, but I want to kind of set up the stage. The article in Washingtonian says, is Richmond turning into the new bedroom community for DC workers, a new area to commute from? Shawn, train ridership between Richmond and DC has increased 26%. We're not talking about people moving to Richmond and driving 2 hours. I want to make that clear. We are talking about people moving from Northern Virginia, where the average sales price is $513,000, to Richmond, average sales price $313,000. So young professionals, those starting their families, they can get a ton more, like almost double for their money. And then they're taking the train up to Union Station in the middle of Washington, D.C. Maybe they're going into the office once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. The train is not that much. Maybe your employer's covering it, or maybe you get, one of these train passes for a couple $100s a month. And now all of a sudden you can watch a movie on your way to work. You can sleep on your way to work. You can bang out a couple podcasts, maybe listen to the Shawn and Matt show on your way to work. So Shawn, what are your thoughts on Richmond becoming the next hottest suburb for those, maybe call it frustrated Northern Virginia buyers that aren't finding the house of their dreams for $500,000? And meanwhile, in Richmond, properties are flying off the market in the 300s.
Hey, Northern Virginia is very expensive, so you have to find a way to be able to afford. If you want home ownership and your job is in DC, I think this is a good opportunity. And I was thinking when you first mentioned this to me, driving. Now, you could 1 or 2 days a week, but you have to go at midnight. You know what I mean? Like, you're not driving through Fredericksburg at,
Zero
anytime.
chance.
Zero chance. If you guys have ever driven down Route 95 and you hit Fredericksburg, every day it is the worst traffic ever. For some stupid reason, Fredericksburg is the nail in the coffin.
Maybe
It's
the worst in
horrible.
the country.
It might be the worst in the country. I mean, it's disgustingly awful. And so if you didn't know, Washington, D.C. we are 95 miles north of Richmond, Virginia. So 95 miles really isn't far. If you didn't hit any traffic, it'd be easy. But when you do hit that traffic, it is the worst, and it's so aggravating. I actually have a friend that was commuting, and she wasn't doing it she was doing it probably once or twice a week. She was driving from the Outer Banks to Fredericksburg. So that's about a 200-mile trek,
Well, that just sounds miserable.
It does. But there's people that'll do it. And to bring another point in, I used to do this.
All right, well, let's hear your commute.
Okay. So back in the day, I was an accountant. I used to take a train, a bus, or I'd drive halfway or whatever to New York City.
From where?
From basically the edge of Pennsylvania and New Jersey. So I'd go the whole way across the state of New Jersey.
Where'd you leave? Where did you start your commute in Pennsylvania?
Shawnee on the Delaware.
That's
small town.
Such a Pennsylvania town
Shawnee,
name.
It's Shawnee, SH, my name plus EE on Delaware.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm gonna do
this?
some calculations.
So what I would do is, it depended on the day, where I needed to be. A lot of times I'd go to Parsippany, New Jersey, and some days I'd go to New York City. And if I went to New York City, I would take a bus. I could take a bus straight from there. And the buses had certain routes that they would take, and then they'd get special things through the tunnels and things like that. But, it would take an hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half sometimes. But you leave at 6 a.m. and you sleep. Or you leave at 6 a.m. and you listen to a podcast or radio or whatever, and you catch up on your day. And then on the way back, you do the same thing. It's a quiet bus ride. No one's speaking. Everybody's sleeping. And there were a lot of people drinking beer. But
Hopefully after work.
After work.
Okay.
But that's the kind of thing that people do up there. People are used to it, and they do it for a lifetime. And then, they make the big city money, and they're living on the cheap side of things. So I think this is a total viable option. Now, one thing that I was thinking about is I think it's early May. The government is putting an end to the pandemic, right? Or they're calling an end to COVID. And what I've heard is that at that point, the government's going to push people to be back in the office. So if that actually does happen, that's going to squash a lot of the dreams of the people that are thinking of moving or have moved already, where they have to start commuting or they have to find a new job. Just saying, I don't know that that's going to happen, but that was a rumor that I was just talking to a friend the other day that is a government worker, and that's the fear that they had. So
Shawnee on the Delaware, about 80, 85 miles away from New York City. So,
so it's about the same.
Very similar commutes. Yeah, I mean, I could see, the article says, is Richmond going to become the new, Ashburn or the new Gaithersburg in terms of people living there and commuting there? The reality is people live in Delaware and commute into D.C. People live in West Virginia, commute into D.C., Pennsylvania, commute into D.C. If you're doing this 5 days a week, that's tough. But hey, if you got confirmation that you can only go into the office once, twice, maybe even 3 times, do a Monday, Wednesday, Friday type of situation, and you're being productive in those 2 hours, I mean, maybe you're even working remotely, on the train, if that's even possible.
That's another thing. You could just totally work on the train, and maybe it's just you need that interaction with the people in your office for meetings and things like that, and then you do your work on the train. I mean,
but so what gets me is like, okay, 36% increase during COVID 2020, 2021. What we're seeing in other places like Boise and Idaho and places like that where everyone moved to, they're all moving out because there's nothing to do. It's cold, all this. There's a lot to do in Richmond.
Yeah,
Richmond is not the middle of nowhere. Richmond is got a lot going for it. Really cool art scene, really cool museums, really cool food scene as well. A lot of breweries. Scott's Addition is probably the most happening neighborhood right now. So you're not moving from Northern Virginia to Montana. You're just literally moving a couple stops down on the Amtrak line.
Yeah, and that's the thing is we are really spoiled here in the DC metro area. We have everything at our fingertips, and I think about that all the time. I'm like, man, if I ever moved, where would I go? And I'm like, I have to be near a city because I need good things to eat. I need to be close to grocery and everything else. And that's what Richmond is. It's a small town. It's a small town city, right? It's a good sized city, but compared to here, it's a lot smaller. But they do have all the things you need, and they have an easier trek to like the beach, the Outer Banks. Like I was saying,
they have an international airport.
Hey, there's a lot of things going on. And I swear I read an article the other day of the 5 hottest markets that Zillow was predicting, and they were all small towns. And I swear Richmond was on it. Pittsburgh was on it as well, and a couple other small ones. But hey, the thing about real estate is you never know. And you just don't know what the hotspot's going to be, where people are migrating to. I was just reading an article this morning about Holland. I think it's Hollandaise Beach or something, like it's just near Hollywood, between Miami and Fort Lauderdale, and they're like it's exploding all of a sudden. There's big, huge development going on. So you never know where it's going to happen, why it's happening. We have just seen a huge mix-up in real estate in the last 3 years because of this whole thing, and people are realizing that hey, there's more to life than just work. And there's better ways to work than going into the office. And so that's changed the whole pattern of real estate.
Cool. Let's move to in or out, whether Shawn battles in or out on 3 properties. Shawn, starting in our own backyard, Realtor.com is reporting that Juan Soto, former Washington National, is selling his $1.1 million Arlington, Virginia house.
I saw that come up. I didn't realize it was Arlington. I saw the article pop up.
It is in Arlington on Williamsburg Boulevard. He bought the house for $1 million in October of 2021, and he is now selling it for $1,095,000. So trying to move a cool $95,000 in profit. Shawn, it's a modest house. It's 2 bedrooms.
Okay.
It's 2.5 bathrooms. And I think it's about 1,200 square feet. So it's very small. But it's also got an attractive price tag, and it said it was lightly lived in. So Soto was on the road, and then of course he was dealt at the trade deadline because the Nationals don't pay their superstars. So Shawn, are you in or out on Juan Soto's Arlington, Virginia house for $1.1 million?
Me personally, all right, let me say this. Williamsburg Boulevard is a little bit more trafficked, but it's a good location in North Arlington. Great schools. It's got a lot going for it. 2 bedrooms not going to work for me, but it's a really well done house. It looks really nice. I think it's going to sell. Is it for me? No, I probably would pass on it, but I think it's a good opportunity.
Do you think it's going to get more showings because of the?
Yeah, I think there's
selling it.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's going to pop in showings because of that reason. Hey, wouldn't you advertise it?
Well, it's a 2-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom. So I think for families that are just getting started, it can work until maybe you have the second one or so. By the way, look at the photoshopped grass. This looks like like the outfield where Juan Soto used to play.
It does.
That grass.
And look, there's no leaves, but
and
that
then,
grass looks amazing.
Surprising. Look at all
there's
those
the
leaves.
real grass.
Dude, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in on the house. It's that nice in between of not a condo, not a townhouse, not an outrageously priced house, and everything is moving ready.
Yeah, and you know what? It's really difficult to find something in Arlington and North Arlington for this price point that is well done like that. So, if at a different time in my life, yeah, I would totally been in on that. But for me right now with 2 kids, ain't gonna do it.
Well, if you're looking for something bigger, Shawn, I think I might have something for you. So, again, coming from Realtor.com, Purple Rain, Castle Clad in Royal Hues in Pacific Northwest, available for rent. Shawn, for if you want more space and if you want to live in a castle, and it's a little whimsical, I have a 5-bedroom chateau for you in Sequim, Washington, outside of Seattle, Washington. It's on a family-owned farm, 200-acre farm. It's 6,000 square feet. The rental comes fully furnished. It's available for $7,000 a month, Shawn, or $1,000 a night, Shawn. Are you in or out on the 5-bed, 3-bath, 6,000 square foot Purple Castle in the state of Washington?
Matt. I love the location of this next to the water, a big 6 acres that it's on. Or
I
whatever
hear
it
a
is.
but coming up.
Yeah, but the thing is,
There it is.
I hate purple and pink houses, and
How many purple houses are you coming across?
Well, I mean, they're out there, but look at that. What
Isn't
I'm saying
there a pink
is that
house on Washington Boulevard?
there is. I was going to bring that up. The pink house is right by my house, pretty close to it, on Washington, and man, it gets the attention. But I don't like gaudy looking places. I'm not into the castle look, especially a purple castle. Now, Purple Rain, I could get into. I like some prints. I'm good on that. I like the name. I love that where you're close to the water. Anything close to water, I love. But Purple Rain itself, the building, I'm not a big fan, so I'm going to pass.
Man, first Soto's house is too small. Now this one is too big.
I guess I woke up on the wrong side of the bed today.
I got you near a body of water too, so you're not landlocked.
You could talk me into it. You could possibly. If the fishing was good and the weather was okay, maybe. But
I mean, you got 2 swords in your bathtub, two large hatchets in your bathtub.
Yeah.
And you got the bidet. And you got stones in your bathtub.
Yeah, I'm not on the medieval kind of.
You're not a medieval kind of guy.
No.
So $7,000 a month for a castle. I'm in on the castle. I see this as if I'm going to Airbnb for, a month in 12 different places. Sure. Let me drop $7,000 on a castle in Washington.
Look at that one.
Dibs on August. Seattle in August.
Hey,
yeah. Sign me up. I mean,
look at that garage.
You pull up to that every single night, you're in business.
There's like stone walls in one of the bedrooms or 2 of the bedrooms.
Yeah.
It's very cool looking, but I'm just not a castle guy. Unless it's an authentic castle. This is like a princess castle.
Well, it was built, a long time ago.
Yeah.
It was built in 1908.
Remember I did buy that one up in New York.
So maybe
that was cool.
Reached your castle quota.
Yeah, I think I did.
Well, the next house is not a castle, but it's kind of close to it. So we are going to Wales, which is not in England. It's actually a separate country. Do you understand how the UK and Great Britain
kind
work?
of. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to start saying stuff because I'll probably be wrong. But
Yeah, me neither. But this is in Wales, which is a country. It's called the Old Defensible Barracks, Pembroke, Dyfed, and they have offers over €500 as of now. Shawn, I'm going to describe this defensible barracks to you. It is a 20-sided Renaissance-style stone fort surrounded by a dry moat with a parade ground in the middle. It was built between 1841 and 1846, and it's simply a huge property that overlooks the water and a golf course in Wales. So, Shawn, are you in or out on the barracks for over €500 so far? You'd have to put in an offer, and I will show you the 3D tour, which will make you immediately not want to buy it.
yeah.
The poor guy that had to do the, or gal that had to do the 3D tour.
This is an immense 3D tour. Holy crap. Really? They did the entire thing? This thing is huge.
I don't know if they went all the way around. I have one wall that we're looking at right now.
Gosh.
But you can imagine the amount of work that is needed. And we're just in a hallway right now.
How many square feet? Did it say how many square feet?
I mean,
so here's what I'll say. At first, I was like, yeah, I'm buying this for 500 grand because I'm turning this into a hotel, like right near the golf course. And that's the style property is. It's huge. It's a hotel type property. And if I don't know whether you can do that in this area or not, but to me, right, that would be a sick hotel.
yeah, I'd fill up that moat.
Yeah. I mean, this would be cool. So for that way, I might be in. You got view of water there. You're on a golf course.
I need to be a member of that golf course if I'm buying this.
So think about the opportunity of people coming to stay at this, barracks, kind of castle-y looking thing. It's not a castle, but it looks that way. And you got a round of golf, you got water close by. This could be a really good investment. Now, the problem is that it's so big that you're going to buy it for $500,000, but you better have probably about $5 million to put into it. Not only that, when was it built? In the 1800s? Think about the plumbing. Has the plumbing been updated? And if it hasn't, my gosh, the stuff you got to do to that. So I think it's probably a little bit too much of an investment after you buy it. So for that reason, maybe you convinced me to buy it. Maybe.
Well, it's so funny that you had mentioned $5 million because when I was looking into this, I was like, I'm in if my budget for renovations is $5 million.
There you go.
And then I'm in. So €500, it would bankrupt you, right?
Yeah.
That the house, the castle, the barracks would bankrupt you. But if you have a minimum budget of renovations for $5 million and you feel comfortable renovating in the country of Wales, pretty neat property.
It's pretty neat. Pretty neat. So if you've got investors, you want to make a hotel, I think this is the spot.
Yeah, we found one in Wales. Just got to go over there and play a quick 18, an emergency 18. All right, well, thank you so much for watching. Let us know what you think in the comment section below for Shawn and myself. Until next time, we'll see you then.
Take care.